Can you hear me now? It was just said it was unmuted. So we can hear me now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Because somebody's about to say, I can't hear you, Mr. Carey. All right. So this is a picture. So today what we're doing is working backwards. We're going to be given a picture, but you got to make an equation from the picture given from what you knew from last week. All right? So y'all are going to help me with this part. Today is all on y'all. So first thing, somebody just tell me your share out. I don't care if you're face-to-face or virtual. What are some things, or what is one thing I need to identify in order to make an equation from this picture? The high, middle, and low. All right, so cool. I can see visually that the high in this picture is going to be 4. So I'm going to draw a line in this case to identify that that's the high. And I'm going to also write it out. 4 is my high. All right, and I can visually see that my low is -2. All right, that's my low. Now, given these two numbers, can someone mathematically tell me how I can find the middle? Because that's important. I could look at the graph. However, mathematically, if I want to find the middle or the average between these 2 points, better said, how would I do that? Anybody?
You add them together, then divide them by 2.
I add these 2 numbers together and divide them by 2. All right, so if I add these 2 numbers together and divide them by 2, I end up with a positive 1. Trust me on that. So I'm going to draw a line through 1, and that's going to be my middle. All right, new word for the day. Whatever my middle is also called the midline. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now that the midline is 1. So the middle translates to many parts. So the middle is going to be 1, because that's the midline. The midline just means the line that goes through the middle of the graph. It kind of splits it in half, per se. All right? The vertical shift should be what? The same as the midline, because last week we learned that the vertical shift was whatever the middle was. So it's going to be +1. And as far as direction means, which direction do we go in? Up, down, right, left. Up. Since it's positive, that means this graph shifted up 1. Alright. Now, amplitude is, of course, the definition we define it as is how big or small the wave is. Today, I'm going to ask you to define it as, or from now on this point, I'm going to ask you to define it as the distance between the midline and the high point, or the midline and the low point. So given what I just stated, what should the amplitude be?
3.
3. Exactly right. So again, the application of the amplitude is the distance from the midline to the high point or the midline to the low point. That's how you actually apply the amplitude definition. Alright? Just not how big or small the wave is, but to actually apply it means to go from the midline, go up, from the midline to go down. Those answers should always be the same. If you get different answers for that, then you have done something wrong with the midline or your math is wrong. So the distance from the middle to the high and the middle to the low will always be the same. Alright? Last thing is, before I finish, I got to make an equation. So I want to make an equation, and I want to fill it up with stuff. So, is this, I didn't know if this is a sine or a cosine graph. Is this a sine or a cosine graph? Somebody, anybody? Well, how does each one flow?
Cosine.
Figure out how they flow. Somebody's about to say something.
It's cosine.
It's cosine. Why is it cosine?
Because it's going down. It's like a V, basically.
It's a V. So how does a V trend in those terms of high, middle, low?
High, middle, low, middle, high.
Exactly right. So high, middle, low, middle, high. Those are the takeaways I asked you to have from last week on the notes. So this is high, middle, low, middle, high, which means it is cosine. that means I got something to put here. I'm gonna go ahead and put cosine theta. Theta is gonna be the variable we use all the time. And I'm gonna put a blank here, because that's the only things he talked about, amplitude and vertical shift. So, what should go in this first space? Anybody?
3.
3, because 3 is the
Amplitude.
amplitude, and we learned last week that the amplitude always goes next to the trig word, like right in front of it, stuck to it. All right, and then what goes behind the cosine theta?
1.
What kind of 1?
The plus 1.
Plus 1, because I don't want you to put a 1 there and think that's okay.
Okay.
So plus 1 goes back here. All right. Notice the trends and similarities. Notice that the midline is the same thing as the vertical shift. Notice that the vertical shift is the same thing as the middle. Notice that all 3 of these things that are in common go at the end of the equation. All right. Notice that the amplitude is the distance from the middle to the high and the middle to the low. It's the same number. And notice that the amplitude goes out in front. All right. Notice that we named it cosine because we learned last week that if it starts at 0, which is right here, so it goes on forever, we care about what happens at 0. So we don't care about what happened over here. We care about how we started right here. That's the focus. How does it start right here on this area? It started high, middle, low, middle, high. And let me emphasize that's what we care about today, because tomorrow might not be the same thing. But today we care about how it starts at 0 and ends at minus made. So it started high, middle, low, middle, high. We learned last week that meant cosine. We had slides on that. So that's that one example. Any clarifying points on this before I move on? Again, take your pictures, your screenshots, whatever you got to do before I move on to the second example. For y'all, the person that will be stuck on top of the board when we done with everything for the day. So yeah, it's questions. All right. So I got nothing in my chat. Moving on to the second example. All right. By the way, this says example number 7 and this says example number 8 because on the answer key, those are the problems that are attached to this picture. So when I release the answer key, 7 and 8 are the ones we went over in class. All right. So let's go back and do this all over again. So what's the first thing that I should identify given the situation? The highs and at least the highs and the lows. We may not have the middle outright, but we can do the high and the low. So 3 is the high, and -3 is the low. Alright. I need to find my middle. So how do I do that? Anybody? Somebody.
Is it 3 minus 3?
It's 3 minus 3, and then what do I do to it?
Divided by 2. It's
Divided
0.
by 2, which is still 0. Alright, so don't just say 3 minus 3 and get 0 and think you're done. Right? Just because that number is positive or negative. You're going to say the answer divided by 2. So 0 is here. Alright? So 0 is the middle. This satisfies so much in this equation because the 0 is also going to be wet parts.
Midline.
I can't hear you, Leah. Speak up.
The midline?
Midline?
The midline, yeah. The midline, and it's also going to be the
Vertical shift.
vertical shift.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, now, the vertical shift is 0. If I wanted to put that in layman's terms or common sense terms about the shift, what would I say? Did it go up? If my vertical shift is 0, did it go up?
No.
Did it go down? So what kind of shift I got?
Straight shift.
Well, not straight shift, but thank you for your input. Let's call it no shift. Alright, that's an option, no shift. All right, I'm gonna be sure to write shift out clearly so that no one misconstrues the word that I'm writing. S-H-I-F. No shift. I'm on one today. All right, so no shift. All right, can someone then tell me now, or you could have told me at any point in time, what the amplitude is on this problem? Three. Because again, I want to measure the distance from the middle to the high. Let me do my little thing right. The middle to the high, or this distance here. Either way, they should both be 3. Alright, and that's a coincidence in both problems being 3. I ain't mean to do that. I'm sorry. It'll be different numbers on your work, I promise. Alright, just know that the distance from the middle to the high or the middle to the low should be the same answer, which is now 3. And then last thing I need to know is this sine or cosine sine. How do you know it's sine? Alright, so because this one is going middle high, starting from that line I drew, middle high, middle low, and then middle, that's a sine graph.
How can you tell again?
Repeat that again.
How can you tell again which one it is for sine or
Because
cosine?
if I start at 0, if I start at this line and where the point is, so this point compared to this and this has to be the middle. You agree?
Yes.
And we learned last week that sine starts middle high, middle low.
Yes. Okay. So only if it's 0, it's going to be sine?
Say what?
Only if it starts at 0, it's going to be sine?
No. So the look is to start at the origin to see what it does. Because over here, on the previous problem, it started high. Right? So it started up here on the previous problem. Knowing that it started high told us that it was cosine. Knowing here that it started middle, we know that it's sine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Starting from that initial point right here. So we know it's sine. So I'm going to put blank. And then I'm going to write sine, theta, and then I'll put another blank. Alright? Somebody tell me what's going on the first blank. Anybody? You're rounding the curve. We ready to go home. Let's go.
3.
3. Exactly right. The amplitude goes here every time. No fail. Whatever the amplitude is, goes right here. What goes here?
0.
0. Cool. So I'm going to say plus 0. Now, to be crystal clear, you will not see plus 0 on a quiz or a test. You will just see this answer choice. You'll see 3 sine theta. And that's it. Because again, we said last week that if we saw no number back here, that the vertical shift is 0. We said if we saw no number in front for the amplitude, that is assumed to be a 1. So no number in the back is 0. No number in the front means 1. Alright, don't forget it, write it down. Let me say that again. No number in the back for the vertical shift, where that's located, is 0. No number in the front means it's a 1 that's supposed to be there. Other than that, let me give you time to screenshot or take a picture, 10 seconds, and I want to make some general statements out loud to address some issues I or you may have. 10, 9, 8, 75, don't fix it. Alright, so here's what I need to say. One, I want to emphasize how important this is to learn the things that we're doing.